Okay, I think we can get started, Thomas, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So
Monica has just arrived.
yeah, I will have the first speakers for the session. So let me welcome you everyone to the Atlantis EU CIP and ECSCI cluster joint webinar, which is focused on how EU R&D projects can shape standards and policies in CIP. My name is Mariana Haralambous. I'm a project manager at Innovact, one of the consortium partners at the EU CIP. And I am pleased to moderate today's webinar along with Thomas. Before I pass the floor to Thomas, just a couple of housekeeping notes. The webinar is being recorded, so it's going to be available afterwards in the EU CIP Knowledge Hub and on the Atlantis website. And while we go along with the presentations, please feel free to type any questions into the chat. We will have a dedicated time for questions at the end of the webinar, but of course, each presenter can just go ahead and give a direct reply in the chat. So I think without further ado, Thomas, we can get started. So with session one, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mariana. Thank you everyone for joining this very important webinar, Fortifying the Future, how EU are under project can shape standards and policy in critical infrastructure protection. As you know, this webinar is divided in two sessions. The first session will more focus on the European critical infrastructure resilience standards and policy landscape and how EU project can contribute. This session should last around 2 hours, and the second session, after a 15 minutes break between 11 and 11:15, we'll focus more on standards and policy activities of Horizon Europe project. Mariana said, given all the speakers of this webinar, you're kindly invited to write down your question in the chat, and we will more focused on your question at the end of the webinar during the Q&A session, right? Okay, so if nobody has question about the organizations and logistics, I suggest that we don't waste more time and we give the floor to the first speaker, Monica Caldarelli, who will speak about ERN's CIP, how over 10 years of pre-standardization impact. So, please, Monica, the floor is yours. So you'll just tell me next, and
yes, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning. Thanks for, and apologies for this delay. Good morning. I'm Monica Cardarelli from the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and I will be providing an overview of the ERNCIP framework started more than 10 years ago, giving also a few insight on how the new ERNCIP scheme is going to support the third directive and its implementation needs. Next, please. Yeah, just a few words about the JRC, which is the center that carries out research in the various fields. It's the in-house scientific services of the European Commission, providing independent and evidence-based knowledge to support EU policymaking. Located across 5 different countries, the JRC hosts specialist laboratories and unique research facilities and is home to thousands of scientists. Next, please. Yes, as I established more than 10 years ago, ERNCIP represents the flagship project of the European Programme for Critical Infrastructure Protection under the previous ECSCI directive, and it established a large network of experts gathered in the form of thematic groups. It involved different expertise relevant for critical infrastructure protection, expanding over time into the broader concept of resilience. At the beginning, this network was focused on providing support to pre-standardization at EU level that were relevant for critical infrastructures. especially dealing with security, but now it's in the new scheme, it's going to evolve covering a more all hazards framework. Next, please. Yes, and as mentioned, NCIP was based on different thematic groups relevant for critical infrastructures, which over time started and closed based on the relevance and based on specific needs. This specifically, NCIP was started with a strong focus on protection and moved towards resilience over time to reflect better the evolving security landscape. It was a network that were experts for supporting specific needs on a voluntary basis and work together in different thematic areas. Doing what? Specifically trying to develop common testing protocols, standards, guidelines, but also recommendation for practitioners and policy making. And also, I mean, it had a strong focus on trying to disseminate and raise awareness through specific trainings, workshops, and webinars. Next, please. So in terms of material, the different deliverables that NCIP were mainly were guidelines and best practices to support infrastructure operators, practitioners, and security-related professionals. But also try to develop recommendation for developing standardization research activities and also to support policy making. Also was something that NCIP tried to do is to develop specific and tailored webinars that were aimed to facilitate a more and broader understanding of what security means under the different, let's say, premises of NCIP, and also how security should cover different needs of different sectors related to the thematic group that were in focus. Next, please. So here are a few examples of the latest activities carried out by NCIP. So we try to work on different types of hazards, specifically CBRN, but also different types of infrastructure, and trying to leverage specific sectorial needs, but also transversal needs. So how CBRN could affect different sectors, but also what type of effects this could imply when related to a more sector agnostic context. And also one of the main, let's say, elements was to understand how CBRN contamination could affect under the framework of intentional contamination, but also accidental contamination. Other aspects in focus were the development of technical and operational solution to respond to deliberate contamination, but also trying to understand how this can be prevented and also protect in terms of further spreading. One of the main activities of one thematic group was the development of standards in the context of nuclear instrumentation, and also trying to really understand how a data format and acquisition can be used in terms of detection and measurement of radiation. Next, please. So now we are going to how the previous NCIP framework is going to evolve to reflect the new directive, the self-directive, and how this shift should be looked at. Indeed, we are in a period where this transition from the previous ECI directive to the self-directive implies a different, let's say, context that reflect the broadening of the scope that covers more sectors. So we're passing from 2 sectors to 11 sectors, also moving from the protection only to resilience concept, and also how the definition of what was considered critical infrastructure to the broader definition of critical entities should be reflected into the evolution of NCIP, which is now going to be called NCER. And this also implies different dynamics that are reflected to the type of threats to be covered, the needs of including the interconnection of systems, and also how this the information sharing and communication should be tackled. Next, please. So in this shift, the GRC is going to support the implementation of the CER directive, specifically looking at the development of non-binding guidelines, related to support the identification of what is a critical entity and also how significant disruptive effects should be defined, but also to specify what are the technical security and organizational measures that should be put in place by critical entities, together with a reporting template that will be used by member states to report on their risk assessment. In addition, in these different lines of work, the GRC is going to, as I say, to update, let's say, this network of experts to better reflect the needs of the new directive, in a new network that will be named European Network for Critical Entity Resilience. So also the name of the network is going to change to better reflect the new directive. Next, please. Next. So how this new network is going to look like, specifically is going to support the implementation of the directive, which implies a series of new updates and new developments. As I mentioned, one is to look to identify what are specific needs that relate to resilience, not only protection. And this also is going to look into a framework that tries to look at hazards in a more transversal and holistic way. And how specifically in the way the network is will be shaped, and also the way the network is going to work. So specifically, we need to expand also the type of expertise that will be considered under the network. Also the way also cooperation should be leveraged, and the different lines of activities. What are specific needs needs for capacity building, specific needs also for information sharing, and how also we are going to support, let's say, the new directive with specific ad hoc basis. Next, please. So this is a way of how we think that the new framework should work. So mixing sectorial related needs, but also transversal needs. So taking into account the 11 sectors that the new directive is covering, we see also the needs that are transversal. So specifically when we speak about specific metrics, development of indicators, but also data interoperability and how interdependencies should be considered. Also the key role of new technologies and the new emerging threats. And this also needs to consider sector specificity. So in this framework, we are going to look at both sector-related needs, but also something that is more transversal and tries to capture the new trends and also the new needs. Next, please. So here an overview of our main channels, if you want to get to know more, and also if you want to subscribe to our newsletter that we develop in cooperation with DG Home, that gives an overview of the new policy initiatives, research fundings, and events to stay up to date. So with this, I thank you very much, and I'm hoping to answer to any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Thank you. Great. Being very efficient. So, unless Mariana, are you here?
Yes.
Yeah. Perhaps we can take one question. That's it, and then jump to the next speaker.
No problem. Yes, I can see a question from John.
Hello, John. You're on mute.
Good morning, Monica. Thank you for the presentation. I wrote the question also on the chat. How could EU projects, like for example Horizon projects, collaborate with JRC? In the past, I recall that the JRC used to be a partner in some projects. This is not anymore the case. So what other options are for projects? One, I understand the expert group is one possibility, the expert network, but what other possibilities are there for most of the people here, right, that are working on some EU funded projects to collaborate with your experts now that you are not a partner anymore in projects? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a really relevant question. Yes, besides being part of our network of experts, we cannot be part of a project consortium anymore. So we can be part of the advisory board. So once the projects are funding and they are starting their first project cycle, we can be asked to to join the advisory board of the project. So trying to guide the project towards some specific needs, implementation needs for the directive, but also other lines of activities that are in line with EU-related policy making needs. So that's a way. So GRC can be part of that advisory board, supporting the project and aligning the project towards something that is relevant for the different, let's say, units, but also something that does not also conflict with it somehow. So yes.
Great. Let's have time for perhaps one more question, and then we can give the floor to the next speaker. Does anyone has another question for Dr. Kardarivi?
There is a question in the chat, another one.
Yes. How can an organization become a member of the ECSCI network? Yes, the network is going to be established. So once ready, we are going to launch a call for experts, and this will be done through different channels, but one of them is our newsletter. So I would advise you to subscribe so to get this information once it's published. And that's a way to become part of the network. So really applying to this call might facilitate also, you know, the possibility, opportunity to get involved and to become part of the different lines of work.
Good. Okay. Well, no more questions. So I think we can give the floor to the next speaker right now. Mariana, do you agree with me?
Of course.
Okay,
I mean,
okay,
if there are no
great.
other questions.
So the next speaker is Ms. Alicia Melaseke Germini. Sorry if I misspelled it. She's a CEO of Meta Group. Her presentation will focus on booster unlocking your full potential from results to impact. So please, Mrs. Melaseke, the floor is yours.
Good morning to you all. Thank you for this invitation and the possibility to present the Booster Initiative from the European Commission. I'm now trying to share my screen. So let's hope that it will work. Okay. I want for the full screen, so
Yes,
let me
perfect.
know if... Yeah, okay.
Right.
Great. So the idea of the next 10-15 minutes is to present you the Booster initiative from the European Commission, DG RTD. Actually, the idea of the Booster initiative, which is managed by my company, Meta Group, and a consortium of external contractors. Actually, the idea is to support EU-funded projects to achieve their impact. It's important to say, first of all, that actually booster services are delivered free of charge, so 100% at no cost for eligible projects, and that can be requested at any given moment because it's always an open call. Actually, we just launched the booster and it will be up and running for the next 4 years. And each application is evaluated per se, so it means that it's not a competitive type of process. The benefits are connected, of course, to successful dissemination and exploitation activities. So, of course, thanks to the booster support, it could be better define your pathway to impact, increase chances to transform your outputs in concrete benefits. So, outcomes and then impacts, identification of a target audiences and best channels, how to reach those, access to other funding, increased team skills on dissemination and exploitation. Actually, applications are only online, and it's very straightforward because you can just access the application form through our website. And actually, it could even be, saved in draft and then submitted when fully filled in. But actually, just very basic information are requested because currently, differently from the previous initiative, applicants express their interest in receiving booster services, but then once the application is approved by the Commission, which makes the eligibility check, a mentor team is appointed to agree on the best services which could fit the project's needs. Actually, in terms of eligibility, actually all the projects ongoing or closed coming from one of the research framework multi-annual programs are eligible, actually directly funded by one of the programs or even indirectly through the EIT knowledge and innovation communities or joint undertakings or partnerships. Actually, we can receive applications not only from a single project, but as well from a group of projects clustered for any good reason, single organizations or even a group of organizations. But in case of single organizations and group of organizations, there is still the need to an eligible project. Actually, the booster services can be divided in three main categories. We have the personalized support, then the dissemination and exploitation building blocks, then the dissemination and exploitation adds-on. Starting with the personalized support, the very first service that we can deliver is the entry-level consultation that I was already mentioning. So a team of mentors is appointed actually to align the needs with of the beneficiary, the applicant, with what the booster can offer, and as well to agree on the best timetable to have the services delivered. But the mentors do not stop to work with the project or the organization with the entry-level consultation, but actually it's the mentorship continues throughout the booster services delivery in parallel in a way, and even afterwards to there will be a continuous mentoring to support, all the activities which are foreseen within the pathway to impact. Then there is the dissemination and exploitation building blocks, which is divided in two main services, at least for the time being. In 2025, additional services could be added to that, but for the time being, it's dissemination support and go-to-market support. The dissemination support actually can be requested by individual projects as well, differently from the previous initiative, and actually the experts are appointed to fine-tune your dissemination plan in case of an individual, of course, project or organization. So the dissemination plan to avoid which could be the main pitfalls which could occur, to better shape it and define it, and as well help to showcase your results on the Horizon Results platform. In case of a project group, of course, in this case, there is the creation of a joint dissemination plan to, help you out to leverage on each of the projects which is composing the project group, and on, of course, then disseminating the portfolio of results. Then there is the go-to-market support. Actually, the go-to-market support is the most structured, I would say, type of support. The idea is that, throughout the different modules, there is the possibility to support the actions for specific purposes. Again, all the services are structured in the way, of course, they are offered, but then are customized in the content to match the specific needs of each applicant. All the services are delivered through virtual means, so remotely. There is the possibility to organize some in-person type of meetings, but this needs to be then pre-agreed with the commission and the PO in the specific case. And another important point is that all the experts which are appointed to deliver the services, they act as facilitators, they act as trainers, as mentors, as coaches, but they do not substitute the beneficiaries in their work running the project activities. Actually, throughout the service delivery, we provide, of course, methodologies, tools, but we work on key exploitable results which are specific for the project. In the go-to-market support, actually, there is the module A, which is the kickoff, which allows to align among the, of course, the experts and the beneficiaries, to set the scene, and of course to align on concepts, but as well on reciprocal homeworks and to-dos, because it's a collaborative type of work. Then in the module B, key exploitable results are characterized and assessed, and the unique value proposition is defined. The module C works around the exploitation strategy seminars, so all the initiatives, all the actions which are needed to clearly define the exploitation strategies and the path. Then there is the business plan, which could include as well the exploitation option type of support, co-design of a business plan, and a commercialization plan, feasibility assessment of the business plan, and other type of site support like innovation management, and initial type of support on IP management. Module E is very specific for access to other funding support and entrepreneurship support, which includes even support to startup and spin-off. And the last one is linked to the reporting. Then once you have passed through the D&E building blocks, at least one of them, or at least some modules of the go-to-market support, you can access the dissemination and exploitation add-ons. We have 5 services there. The first one is networking, which helps you to expand your contact base thanks to the support of the experts, and engage with different type of stakeholders. Then there is the portfolio analysis. In case you are an individual project, you would like to create from scratch a project group or cluster with others. This service helps you out to, of course, identify which could be the other projects to group with, to create a portfolio of results coming from the different projects, to identify target audiences, best channels to reach them. And then the idea could be that then you go back to one of the dissemination and exploitation building block, like the dissemination support, to create a joint dissemination plan. Intellectual asset management, this is a vertical service which is offered going more vertical in IP valuation, IP negotiation, IP management. Then coaching for public speaking. This is the how to pitch type of service, which help you out depending on the type of audiences that you would like to reach in the best way to prepare your slide deck. And of course, to know which is the best way to approach certain type of groups of stakeholders, like investors. Then audiovisual support. For the time being, this service is limited to the creation of a video, which should be first uploaded in the Horizon Results platform to showcase your results, but then could be used for any other type of purpose. As I was mentioning, you can apply online through the Horizon Results Booster, of course, website. It's important to know that to be eligible, you should have already signed your grant agreement with the Commission, and the start date should be already passed. In case, of course, of indirect funding, you should have received already the awarding of the funding, like from the EIT Knowledge and Innovation Community funding, or the partnerships or joint undertaking type of funding. If you're not coming from one of the eligible funding, actually you can benefit from booster services, of course, grouping with at least one project which comes from the eligible funding. So if, for example, you come from a LIFE funding or Erasmus Plus type of funding, you can access the booster services grouping from like a research and innovation action, a CSA, ERC, Marie Curie, EIC, Pathfinder, Transition. I mean, there are a lot of options there for you to benefit from booster services grouped with uneligible projects. Actually, we can support any type of funding scheme within the eligible project, no matter if your project is dealing with hard science or social sciences and humanities, with a product, a services, an algorithm, a formula, policy recommendation, a standard. I mean, we can support you, and as well, there is, I mean, it's sector agnostic, so 360 degrees in terms of topics. So of course the journey starts with applying through the Booster website, and then there will be the initial consultation, Booster mentor, you agree on the services which best fit your specific case, and then service delivery can start. Actually, we already have pretty big numbers because the initiative now it's launched Booster, but it has been previously the Horizon Results Booster. Perhaps you already heard about that. And actually, so we have already actively involved more than 230 experts, more than 1,800 projects supported, more than 2,200 services requested, and more than 4,000 beneficiaries supported. Here you have the functional mailbox, you can which you can address all your questions, and then the website. And that's it for my presentation, or at least what I, in due time, I wanted to share with you.
Of course, you even 10 minutes in advance. So thank you very much, Mrs. Milaseki. I think, yeah, we can pick up one or two questions because you made it right before the time's up. So perhaps a few of you have questions to raise. Please, John.
Thank you, Alessia, for the presentation. Some of the things we knew already, some were new. So I want to come back. Maybe you explained this very well, but there is still a gap in my mind. In order for an innovative SME from the security sector or the civil security market to benefit from your services, does it have to be connected to some funding instrument, or one can benefit from the services even if not connected to any instrument? I'm asking this specifically because discussing with Mr. Skadaresis, he told me that even SMEs non-connected to the funding instruments can benefit from this service. So my question is this the case, and how?
Okay, so it's something new that actually individual organizations and not, full consortia can benefit from the services. So innovative SMEs, of course, can directly apply, but they still have, in principle, they still need to have a link to an eligible funding type of project, which could be ongoing or closed. And of course, they should have the right to bring forward the results they would like to, exercise with the booster experts. There is another way that was actually the same way that I was explaining for non-eligible type of projects, because if an innovative SME, whichever is the sector, which has not a direct connection with an eligible funding, would like to benefit, can be grouped with another project which perhaps has an interest in, like an end user or an early adopter, and they can benefit together by the booster services. So in that case should be the eligible project, which should act as an lead applicant, requesting the booster services and mentioning that there will be other organizations on board, like pre-identified key stakeholder, like an end user or a manufacturer or a distributor. I mean, I'm just an example. The type of role could be any type of other organization.
So it is possible, you just need a touch point on some funded project or initiative,
yes,
but it is possible
yes,
outside. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And it could even be an already closed eligible project. So it could even be from FP7, FP6, or even before, in connection with, but all the relevant information should be provided at the application phase, so the Commission won't have any problem in clearly and quickly, I would say, assessing the eligibility.
All right. Perhaps another question for the next speaker.
And in any case, there is the email functional mailbox and the website in the slides. So even later, I mean, you know how to reach us.
Thank you. Okay, so no more question. Right. Thank you very much. Very enlightening.
You're welcome.
So now I'm very pleased to welcome the next speaker, Mr. Nestor Alfonso Santamaria, Senior Policy Advisor at OECD and a renowned expert in critical infrastructure resilience. He will make a presentation on advancing infrastructure resilience through good governance. So please, Nestor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and hopefully you can see my slides.
Yes.
Fantastic. So it's quite hard to follow such a practical presentation that gives you concrete tools, but I will invite you to bear with me, because I'm going to try and take you a little bit kind of a step back to look at the wider governance piece and how different elements of governance come together to really advance critical infrastructure resilience. For those of you who are not too familiar with the work of the OECD, we are an international organization, and we do a lot of collaboration with the European Union, and in particular the European Commission, on helping our members improve the quality of their policies with a view to improving the quality of the lives of the people that we all serve. And in that space, we do a number of initiatives that support good governance for resilience. One of those is a working party, is a formal working party of the OECD that's called the High Level Risk Forum, that brings together governments, academia, industry experts to develop sort of global standards in response to common challenges. And one of those global standards is the OECD recommendation on the governance of critical risks, which is now 10 years old, legal instrument, and is in the process of being revised. And hopefully soon in the new year, you will see a call for a public consultation on the new version of this document, and I hope that you can all contribute. But the other relevant piece of standard that we've developed is a policy toolkit on governance of critical infrastructure resilience that proposes sort of an approach, a 7-step approach to how to improve the governance of critical infrastructure resilience in order to ensure that those entities responsible for providing the critical infrastructure that our societies rely on can do so with minimal interruptions. And the toolkit, as I said, has a 7-step approach, if you like, to critical infrastructure resilience governance. And the first part of this 7th step is to encourage the creation of multi-sector governance structures that facilitate understanding dependencies and interdependencies across sectors, but also to explore further vulnerabilities in the infrastructures, to establish trust and secure information sharing mechanisms that further build partnerships that enable shared vision of what critical infrastructure resilience looks like as a nation, and then the kind of policy tools and incentives that are required to get us there, and ensuring accountability monitoring without losing sight of the transboundary dimension of critical infrastructure, in particular critical infrastructure resilience. And the concepts in the policy toolkit were then adopted as part of another legal instrument of the OECD, the recommendation of the Council on the Governance of Infrastructure, which was adopted in 2020, so a little bit more recent. And they will also feature quite strongly in the revised version of the OECD recommendation on the governance of critical risks. Now I'm going to delve a bit deeper into some of the principles that I mentioned, the 7 steps, the 7 principles that are part of the policy toolkit, that are part of the OECD approach to good governance for infrastructure resilience. And the first one is creating multi-sector governance. And here it's really important to adopt a whole-of-government approach to critical infrastructure resilience, involving sectoral ministers and competent authorities and agencies that oversee infrastructure delivery, but also those in charge of understanding hazards and threats that could affect the resilience of infrastructure. The second principle that I wanted to draw your attention to is understanding complex interdependencies. And here, the emphasis is on identifying critical functions, systems, and assets that need to be prioritized for investing in building resilience. Of course, also improving our understanding of how disruptions can cascade across systems and where dependencies and interdependencies could amplify the impacts of events is really important. And understanding priority nodes and hubs that could become choke points, perhaps, in the delivery of infrastructure. And then the last principle that I wanted to cover is addressing transboundary dimension of infrastructure systems. And here, the policy toolkit calls for governments to coordinate national critical infrastructure resilience policies with neighboring countries and beyond neighboring countries to address transboundary dependencies. And a perfect example of this is the collaboration that's already in place across Canada and the US on critical infrastructure, but also in Europe, in the Baltic and the Nordics, for example. Part of the work that we do in the OECD is capture a little bit of what the countries are doing, the OECD member countries are doing, in terms of implementing the principles that I just discussed. And in 2022-2023, we conducted a survey of critical infrastructure resilience policy leads across the OECD countries, so the agencies and bodies responsible for critical infrastructure resilience across the member countries. And we asked a number of questions about kind of how are they implementing these principles. And the first one, of course, is asking whether there is a critical infrastructure resilience policy, strategy, or program in their country that is helping drive this agenda forward. And the overarching minority of the countries are either already having a critical infrastructure resilience policy or program, or in the process of developing a critical infrastructure resilience policy or program. Now, it's worth noting here that this is not to say that most countries, particularly most OECD member countries in the EU, have critical entities resilience strategies already in place. This is a different consideration, because the types of policies and programs that are captured in this slide could include programs that are part of preceding frameworks for critical infrastructure protection, or perhaps national infrastructure resilience programs, or national resilience programs more likely. The next bit is what kind of hazards are covered by these programs. And the majority of countries do follow all hazards approach, with some countries developing specific programs for infrastructure resilience to concrete hazards. And here it's worth noting that since the survey was conducted in 2022-2023, a large number of countries have adopted, in addition to the all hazards critical infrastructure resilience policies or programs, specific cyber resilience policies or strategies. And that's quite an interesting recent development. We haven't seen the same for all of the other hazards. Most of the countries have adopted a series of policies on climate change adaptation of critical infrastructure, but those policies are not always only targeted at critical infrastructure or only targeted at infrastructure in general, but they are part of a wider climate change adaptation policy toolkit. And then the next element is, what are these critical infrastructure resilience policies seeking to achieve? And here you can see that by and large, ensuring public safety and security is at the forefront of countries when putting these policies in place. But also ensuring continuity of government functions seems to be featuring quite high in the concerns that are addressed by these critical infrastructure resilience policies, and ensuring economic resilience. Most countries also have cross-government policy coordination mechanisms. That is, not just a lead coordinating agency that is driving these policy areas, but also platforms where they come together as countries to look at how this infrastructure resilience is organized, how it's delivered, and how the policies are reviewed and followed through. And on the screen, you can see the very wide range of functions that these cross-government policy coordination mechanisms deliver across the OECD member countries. But one of the biggest aspects of these cross-government policy coordination mechanisms is the ability to provide a whole-of-government forum for deconflicting policy priorities and conducting consultation on future developments of critical infrastructure resilience programs. I'm going to now tell you a little bit about some infrastructure resilience policies and programs and strategies that have been adopted across the OECD membership going beyond the EU, which hopefully are useful for you as a little bit of context, as a lot of countries are now in the process of implementing the Critical Entity Resilience Directive. So Australia, the first example that I want to bring to your attention, adopted in 2023 a critical infrastructure resilience strategy that is also coupled with a critical infrastructure resilience plan that unpacks what the strategy sets out to achieve. And one of the aspects of resilience that the Australian strategy flags is that they are seeking to improve the capacity of their infrastructure that is critical for the country to withstand and recovering from emergencies and disasters. So it's very, very aligned with their concept of disaster resilience as a nation, and it forms a fundamental pillar of their national disaster resilience strategy as well. Canada is another example. Their strategy is in the process of being revised. The current strategy dates back a few years, but the principles on the strategy are quite well established, and they form part of the backbone of the critical infrastructure resilience program of Canada, and they're based around collaboration on all hazards approach and information sharing. These are also the same elements that you will find in the Australian strategy. So there seems to be quite a strong level of coherence across these strategies in kind of quite different contexts. As you can imagine, the Canadian and Australian contexts are very, very different. Going back to the Americas, in the US, the adoption recently this year.
The program, which celebrated 45 years because it started in 2013.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Supported 31 Nobel Prize winners.
Yes,
Yes,
we can hear you. Someone has his mic open. Let me mute.
Yes, I think someone's listening to something
Yes.
else. It sounds quite interesting.
Can you all please
Sorry.
mute your mics,
Gustavo
everyone.
Marcos, please.
Compared to the average of the world's paper.
Okay, I have muted.
I did it.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's fine.
Apologies.
My
No worries.
apologies, sisters.
No worries, not a problem at all. Hopefully you can still see the screens and you can still hear me.
Yes, we can see the screen and hear you.
Fantastic. So the US National Security Memorandum on Critical Infrastructure, which was adopted earlier this year, establishes a lead institution that is meant to lead the efforts of the country on securing critical infrastructure for the US, and this is the Department of Homeland Security, and the national coordinator for the activities on this space is an agency called the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency. One of the aspects of the National Security Memorandum of the US that is worth noting is the fact that intelligence sharing figures quite high in the agenda of the US currently. Sector risk management agencies are defined, and this is in common with a lot of the other strategies. And standards are put forward. And here there is something that is also linked to the Australian strategy, where they talk about both regulatory and non-regulatory measures to improve critical infrastructure resilience. And then lastly, there's two more examples, one from New Zealand and one from Korea. But I wonder if perhaps, Thomas, you would like us to put some time aside for questions instead of going through these examples, or do we carry on?
Well, it depends. I mean, we're still on time, so you can finish your presentation and then we can pick up some questions. Yeah.
Okay, we'll continue then with the examples from New Zealand and Korea. So whilst New Zealand is also in the process of revising their national strategy for critical infrastructure resilience, they have conducted, as part of their Lifelines Council activity, a vulnerability assessment of national critical infrastructure that includes a clear identification of critical function system and assets that should be prioritized for investment. They also include a clear understanding of how disruptions can not only affect single points of infrastructure, but also cascade across infrastructure nodes, and then which ones are the pinch points. So the interesting difference to what some of the other strategies do is that New Zealand has two types of critical infrastructure that the Lifelines program looks after. And one is essential and enabling infrastructure, which is what they call lifelines. And these are sort of the dependencies, if you like, of most other sectors. And then they have essential services that are being distributed. And here you can see how the country has been seeking to implement some of the lessons they identified during the pandemic in terms of resilience of critical infrastructure that covers not only critical infrastructure in the traditional sense, so including utilities and key services, but then also expanding to include other services that are essential for running society. And then finally, Korea's recently established, also this year, earlier this year, a government-wide core infrastructure security council. And this was established at the highest level of government, with the president putting it under his direct authority and being chaired by the National Security Office. And it brings together sort of the whole of government in an effort to add coherence to the work of the country on critical infrastructure resilience. It also, part in recognition of the transboundary and international dimension of critical infrastructure resilience, establishes a joint response, establishes a aspiration to create a joint response system to critical infrastructure disruption with allied countries going forward. And I think that's the end of my presentation, so I can probably stop sharing the screen and open up to questions.
Thank you very much, Nestor. It's been very, very interesting, and it puts many things in perspectives. I think we have time for a few questions. Please raise your hand if you have questions for Nestor. Alfonso Santamaria, please. I don't see. Any questions? Yes, no.
Yeah, I cannot see any questions, so maybe we can
It's been
move to the next presentation. And if there are any questions, you can feel free to put them in the text, and we have a
yeah.
I'm
the
afraid
Q&A.
that
I believe there is a lot of information to digest, right?
yes.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave the session
No
because
problem.
I'm dialing in from the US, where I'm in another working
Thank you very much for your
commitment.
time and for.
But I hope this was useful.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
was very.
personally, it was really insightful for me.
Good stuff. Hopefully, participants share the feeling.
Thank you.
All the best for the rest of the discussion. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
Nestor.
Nestor.
Bye-bye.
All right, so now I guess we can move on to the next presentation about EU CIP. I don't know if Anna is here, and let me check. I think I've seen Anna. Yes. So Anna and Arsha, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I hope you can see my screen now.
We can see it. Yeah. If you can make it a
Yeah, I
full
see it.
screen.
Did just now. Let me know if it works.
Not yet. It's not full screen.
Let's see. Will be the full. Minute. Can you see it?
No, still we cannot see this. It's not full screen. It's we can see the.
Yeah, very strange. Let's see, maybe.
I think if you click at the bottom right.
No. I think I stopped sharing, no?
No, we can still see your screen.
Oh yeah, we can see your
Still
screen,
the
Anna.
presentation.
Still the
Anna, if
presentation,
you
no?
want, you can send it to me and I can share it if you want.
Oh yeah, would be nice. I think we have 1 minute till our time. So, perfect. Should be this one. Should be now when you are.
Yeah, it's not yet. No, I haven't received it yet. So can you try again by this so that
Of course, of course.
Yep.
Is it now?
It's not full screen.
Super strange.
Presentation mode.
It's on presentation mode. Okay, no, not yet. Maybe look, we can still see. I mean, so that maybe we can not to waste any time. Maybe you can start.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, sure.
And when I get it, I will. We can switch when I receive it
Right.
at my email. Okay.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. So first of all, I'm apologizing for this aspect, and then I would be very glad to say that I'm thankful for having us here. So my name is Anna Pomortseva, and I'm the project officer from the European Organization for Security. And today we will be talking on the UCIP standard support activities for EU projects, and I will be joining by our partner from the Polish Platform for National Security, National Homeland Security, Managing Director Rachel Talukdar, who will be responsible for the second part of this presentation. So I will try to put my part in 7 minutes, and then Rachel will start saying more in details about the standard support specifically. However, we wanted to firstly to start with giving you the understanding what is the UCIP, how we came to that point of the standard support. So just a very quick overview who we are. That we are a 3-year project. We are started in 2022. We are SSRI project focusing on knowledge network for security research and innovation. We are ending next year in September 2025. So this is actually a great opportunity for us to give you the insights and to be present here at this workshop. We are 20 partners, and our main vision is to establish a sustainable knowledge network for the European critical infrastructure experts and the stakeholders. And our main goal is to create this type of the unique pan-European knowledge network for resilient infrastructure, which we'll be talking a bit later in my slides. So how do we do it? We do it through the 3 main objectives, and each of the objectives has own results, which all of our 20 partners are trying to fulfill and to bring to its best. However, let's start with the first one, which is a analysis, UCIP analysis, and who we are and what we are doing. So there are a couple of highlights in the first objectives which we would like to bring to you. The first is the capability needs and gaps. So there is we identify an initial set of capability gaps and needs which are continuously updated, continuously improved on the stakeholders feedback, and those list has already kind of some insights which we would like to share. So first one is the list on the capability gaps and needs on the critical infrastructure protection. And there's some insight. The first one with the AI in automation. So the integration of AI for the predictive analytics and automation is crucial, in particular in cybersecurity and rapid response to cyber physical threats. Then real-time and cyber presence. So of course the real-time capabilities as well essential for situational awareness, especially in the sectors dealing with the high-stake infrastructure like space or the finance. And the cyber physical intelligence tools, which help to detect, reduce, respond, and to manage the threats across the connected system. And then the needs in quantum and the edge technologies. So definitely from the point of quantum technologies, they in the context of cybersecurity, they definitely help to revolutionize our encryption methods, which makes our communication secure, and especially in the context of the critical infrastructure protection, it makes harder for any malicious attack to happen. And in the context of edge technologies. The edge computing definitely, by allowing us to process our data closer to the data sources, it leads us to the low latency. So we are processing our data faster. And in general, these both technologies, the quantum technologies and the edge technologies, in the context of the critical infrastructure protection, they're helping us to achieve the three main points: low latency, flexibility, and the real-time analysis. So in this way, we are trying to mitigate any attack and to make our critical infrastructure more resilient. And important point in this critical in the capability gaps and needs, that it leads us to the other activities which we are conducting within the UCIP, which we'll be talking later. For example, like the market analysis. So we are conducting the multi-source information analysis within the ECSCI cluster, which is thankful to which we are organizing this workshop. So the research initiatives, analytics within the project. And we are also doing the sectorial insights via white papers. We have six sectorial white papers through the water, energy, finance, space, telecoms, and transport. So all of them, they have their own insights, but there are a couple of the common insights on the critical infrastructure protection. As we can see here, which is increased cyber vulnerability, the need for collaboration, supply chain complexity, skills and awareness gaps. And of course, all of this would be impossible without a specific roadmap, which starts from the, as we discussed, with the needs, gaps, and market analysis, till the commercialization and the product development. Hence, as we started with our first objectives on the UCIP analysis, on this one we can base our second objective, which is a UCIP Amplify. In this specific objective, we are providing the UCIP innovation support form services, training services, which you can also find on our YouTube channel. The business plan and co-creation support. As well, we are conducting the open calls. As recently, our open call winners were present during our second annual conference just a month ago. And of course, the catalog of best practices and success. So definitely this range of support initiatives, they help us to support the critical infrastructure protection and resilience in exploitation and commercialization activities later on. So these were the two first objectives, the analysis and the amplify. And based on those two, we can move forward to the third objective, which is the ecosystem. And this is one of the main goals of this project, to create this pan-European knowledge network, which we call a UCIP Knowledge Hub, which is already functioning. Which is a single access point for all the information regarding critical infrastructure protection and resilience. It's a knowledge sharing and collaboration platform between the various stakeholders. And in this way, we are trying to mitigate any information fragmentation in this sector. This knowledge hub accessible to anyone just with a registration click. I also added here the QR code, so you can click it if you have time on your phone. And this platform is currently in the process of developing. We are trying to integrate as much options as possible to be able to use it on the later stages and on the stages after the end of the life cycle of our project. Here is some also information about our ecosystem and how we are trying to achieve it through different such type of the workshops or webinars or any conferences and the joint activities with the project. Hence, as you kind of now we are more aware of our main objectives, who we are, and what we are doing. I think it would be a great time to give a floor to our partner from PPHS, the Rachel, who can talk specifically more on the standards and what we are doing with them and how we are giving the support. So the floor to Rachel.
Thank you, Anna. But first, I will try to share my screen. Share.
I stopped.
Yeah. No. Okay, do you see the full screen?
Yes.
Yes.
You can see the full screen.
All right. So first success. Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Russell Talukder. I'm representing Polish Platform for Homeland Security, which is a partner and member of the EU CIP consortium. I have to explain to you that the presentation was prepared by our experts, but unfortunately, all of them at this particular time were busy, as well as our colleague Youssef, who is mainly involved on behalf of PPHS and EU CIP. He has, at the moment, the final review meeting with European Commission with other projects, so he couldn't join. But that's the reason you have me here today. And before I go to the presentation, I would like to highlight one thing related to the presentation, but it's not in the presentation. That's the reason I'm just worried that I might forgot about it. That we are planning within EU CIP to organize next year a EU-wide workshop on standardization within the framework of the CER directive. And because we have a lot of projects already participating to today's call, I would like to highlight it, and I'm sure that we will be communicating with you in the near future. But if any of you is in general interested, I think you can also just contact us or contact me with the contact details at the end of the presentation. Okay, so what do we do in the EU CIP in the area of standardization? So we try to do our best to do all these activities which you see on the screen. So identify and enhance synergies in standardization across CIP, CIR, and security projects, avoid duplications, support EU projects in engaging with standardization bodies, promote pre-standardization initiatives by presenting the potential contributions. And we also are, and especially will be focusing on developing the policy recommendations for policymakers. Within today's presentation, I would like to focus on one use case about the CER directive, which is for sure a crucial and one of the most relevant matters in area of critical protection of critical infrastructure from the standardization perspective. As probably you know more, even much better than me, that it's not easy to implement the CER directive, and at the moment also the 23 EU countries have not implemented the EU directive, and which is which shows how difficult it is, because according to the time frame which was prepared by European Commission, the deadline for implementation and to transposition into the directive into the national law is 17th or was 17th of October 2024. But as you know, it's so complex matter and so difficult. That's the reason there are these delays across Europe. And so now there are many countries which are in the process of implementation, and hopefully it will be implemented very soon. With regards to CER directive and standardization, my colleagues who prepared this presentation wanted to highlight this Article 16, which from their perspective is the most relevant article in the directive which covers the topic of standards. So whoever's interested can go deeper into this article. But it's also like important to highlight and tell what are the role of the international standards and the CER directive. So it's at first it's a recognition of international norms and standards. Second is a consistency across the EU. Third is equal security levels, and the fourth one is alignment with the directive objectives. I will not go into those like a smaller bullet points. I'm sure the presentation will be shared with all participants. I really like this sentence that both the development of minimum standards for the protection of critical infrastructure and the identification of standards necessary for building resilience of crucial entities will be a challenge for member states in 2025. It's also an additional proof why it's so like difficult to implement this complex directive, and but as you know, as we know, it's happening, and this directive is being implemented. Next slide. With this slide, I think it will also be the best if I just read this part, because the combination of three approaches provides the foundations for building critical infrastructure resilience. And these three approaches are, at first, certification of international standards, like the global one, ISO, or European one, CEN. The second is to development of a list of mandatory standards. It's always a discussion about which standards should be mandatory and which voluntary. There are a lot of definitions which say that standards are only voluntary, but in this case, for critical operators and critical infrastructure, some standards might be mandatory. And the third is the provision of collections of good practices and guides. In order to achieve the standardization work objectives in the EUC project, we will try as an EUC project to identify the following issues in the member states and in the working groups of the European Commission and the European EU Council on the example of the physical security of critical infrastructure facilities. So now you see also what are our plans for the forthcoming months within EU CIP in the area of standardization. I know that it's just 1 minute. I think I have 2 or 3 more slides, so I will do my best to finish it on time. Based on the data obtained within the EU CIP, we will also draft the minimum security standards for all critical infrastructure sectors. So it will be also something, I would say, evidence-based, and then it will be a useful material for policymakers. But what's like especially like relevant for us, because we are a Polish platform for homeland security as a partner of EU CIP consortium, but now. The Polish presidency and the EU Council is coming very fast. It will be in the first half of 2025. And because our experts also are involved and are working in different governmental organizations and also taking care of this topic from that perspective, we are planning to be aligned with the Polish presidency priorities, which also are heavily connected to the critical infrastructure protection. And that's my contact details. I'm sure that if there are any questions, I will be happy to take them. I can note them, or I can, if someone would like to share any questions to me or other colleagues, I will be happy to answer for them in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Very, very interesting and right on time. Thank you, Anna, as well. Thank you. Been lovely. So I think we don't have time to pick up new questions. However, yeah, I think the next speaker is already here. So I'm pleased to welcome now Dr. Nidhi Nagar-Batla, Senior Research Fellow and Cluster Coordinator of the Climate Change and Natural Resources Program at the United Nations University, CRIS, and together with Andrew June, who is Policy Officer at the same organization. So please, Nidhi, the floor is yours. I don't see Andrew connected though. You're on mute, Nidhi.
Yes, sure. Sorry. And first of all, very good afternoon from Riyadh. I'm attending the Community of Parties conference here. And so
nice.
I'll take the opportunity to share my screen, Thomas, if you allow, and maybe share some insights on how as a UN agency we deal with science policy interfacing. Just a minute, I'm just going to open my window. And do you have my presentation by any chance? I'm trying to open mine just in case.
Andrew just connected. Let's see. Try. Hello, Andrew. Andrew.
Amazing. I'm not picking up my screen.
Okay, wait a second. I'll see what I can do.
Hi, Thomas. Hi, Nidhi.
Andrew.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. You have the. We can see your screen. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Fine.
Wonderful. Apologies for being a few seconds late.
No problem. Can you put it in presentation mode? Oh, yeah. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And again, I'm very sorry for being a couple of minutes late. I really apologize. First of all, I want to say thank you to Thomas and the organizers for having us here today. Nidhi and I are from the UNUCRIS, the United Nations University Institute on Comparative Regional Integration Studies. Just a bit of background on UNUCRIS. We're based in Bruges. We're part of the United Nations University Network, which is headquartered in Tokyo, different institutes all over the globe. And our institute focuses on regional cooperation and regional governance, and also multi-level governance, so at the different levels. I will get straight into the PowerPoint as we don't have a huge amount of time. As you can see on the screen, we will be talking today, Nidhi and I, briefly about translating research results into policy advice. In the short amount of time that we have, I thought the best way to do that would be to look at what I think is perhaps maybe one of the most useful tools for doing this, exactly from translating research results into policy advice, is to look at policy briefs. So what I will do perhaps is perhaps maybe just set the scene a little bit. So imagine that you're an elected official serving on a committee that sets the standards cars must meet to pass the mandatory annual inspections. This is a very complex issue. You'd like to learn more about the existing policies, the effects of emissions on the environment and on public health, the economic consequences of different possible approaches, and more. So essentially, you want to make a very informed decision. But the issue is you don't have time to research all of these issues. So what you need is a policy brief. You can see here on the screen now some examples of policy briefs that we have published at UNUCRIS. And Nidhi will go into more detail later about her experience in putting these policy briefs together. So very briefly, I mean, what is a policy brief? I'll touch upon a couple of key aspects here, and then before I hand over to Nidhi. It's essentially the most important thing to remember with a policy brief is that it is a communications tool. So it is not necessarily a research output. It is a communications tool that gives context to a problem and recommendations to non-specialists. It is concise. It is a concise standalone document focused on a single policy topic. So the most important thing there is that it is very precise in its range. It's written in plain, straightforward language, avoids academic jargon, This is very important. As we talked about earlier, policymakers don't have a great deal of time and they may not be experts in the field, so it's very important to make sure that your policy brief is clear for a lot of people to understand. It distills and summarizes key research findings, draws clear links between research and policy initiatives. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next section. And this is very important too, that it's of a short format. So it's ideally 2 to 6 pages. The shorter, the better. The more compact, the better. It may use visual aids like charts to highlight data. Translates complex research into accessible, actionable advice. This is very important, the advice section. Again, we'll touch on that a little bit later. And targets policymakers to inform decisions and initiatives. I've listed here some on the screen. I'm not sure if you'll receive the PowerPoints later, but this is just not a full comprehensive list of who is a policymaker, sorry. But just to give an overview of the different people that you can look to include in your audience when you're conceiving the idea behind a policy brief. So how do you do it? There are 4 main points to a policy brief. The first is purpose. Second is audience. Third is content, and the fourth is structure. We'll just go through some of these points now quickly. Purpose. So the main purpose of a policy brief is really to raise awareness about a specific problem, to identify potential policy solutions, and to provide concrete recommendations. So you have to be very clear from the start what your stance is on this particular issue. This is the issue. This is how urgent it is. If you follow my expert advice based on the research that I have done, I can help you fix it. You also have to very clearly define what you would consider realistically as a win. And everything in your policy brief should be in service of the purpose. So be sure to write it out at the start of your journey and continue to come back to it to make sure that we're always keeping the end goal in mind. As I put on the PowerPoint there. The audience, this is again a very, very, very important aspect. Your goal with a policy brief isn't to reach everybody, it's to reach a very specific group of people, sometimes very small in number. So defining your audience is perhaps the most important step. Who will be reading it? Where do they work? All of these questions sort of personified in the phrase that the more information you know about your audience, the better. So you should write with them in mind. How detailed is their knowledge of the subject? This is also very important. We'll talk about that a little bit later with the how we put it together in terms of visual aspects. If it's more technical, you can perhaps be a little bit more technical in certain aspects if it's for a more generalist audience, or if the policymakers might not be necessarily experts on the subject, then you should be a little bit broader. How much authority do they have to dictate the policies you're targeting? And again, everything should be in service of the purpose. Content, this is just a very brief. In 2014, there was 2 surveys done of around 500 US and UK policymakers. They found, which found that policymakers find much scholarly work inaccessible. Shock horror, I think we all knew that might be the case. What they really want is they want researchers to write in plain language. Long reports are not useful in this particular instance. So hence the need for a compact document that highlights everything that they need to know, a policy brief. Guiding principles needs to be clear, succinct, and very focused. And effective policy briefs contain the same key elements and similar structure. There is nothing groundbreaking here. I mean, these are all pretty standard structure of these kinds of documents. There is flexibility, of course, depending on audience and a couple of other factors. But all policy briefs require these ingredients to cook up a very good policy brief. A title, of course, I'll try to understand. We're 10 minutes in, fantastic. Okay, so let's say title, we need to look at, this is obviously a very important thing that a lot of you will know with your research, how important it is to have a very good title that really captures the interest of your readers. Executive summary, just some points there. I'll skip through a couple of these. The introduction, about it should set up the rest of the documents and clearly convey your arguments. The research overview, this is obviously one of the most important sections because it really explains the reasoning behind your policy recommendations. Avoid jargon, again, another very key point to keep in mind. Research findings. So you should interpret the data in a way that is accessible and clearly connected to your policy advice. Use active language, be convincing, yet also ensure that your analysis is balanced and fair. A couple of other points there. Conclusion and recommendations. Again, draw the link for your readers between the research findings and your recommendations. And this is very important, I think. You should let them know of the implications. So what I show you above in this policy brief is X, and that is why we need Y. Your conclusions and recommendations and your should be in paragraphs or in bullet points, but they should always be numbered. Sorry, this is so that when you're in discussion with policymakers or other people, that you can say, in recommendation 2 we talk about this, or recommendation 5 we mention that. Yeah, you want your readers to be completely convinced that yours is the best advice. And then final points before I hand over to Nidhi is we talk about design. So text is not enough, particularly with such a short document. We need to be visually stimulated as well. And good design can really keep the reader engaged. Titles and headers, these are very important. Using subheadings or headings to break up the text and highlight each section's main topic. Informative but concise. Information boxes. Now, this is something to keep in mind when you're formulating the policy brief. Yeah, these really visually break up the content and improve readability. These should be very brief, obviously, and descriptive, engaging, and action-focused. I have an example here from one of our policy briefs. Obviously, the eye is drawn immediately to two different things on this page: to the red box and to the world map. So it's important to make sure that within that box, we either include things like facts, which are always, things, small little tidbits that people remember, stories, these kinds of things. And then the final point on design is graphics and standout quotes. These reinforce your arguments, highlight key information, and really catch the attention of skimmers. Which, I mean, in some cases, people will, when they read your document, unfortunately, not go through all of the details. They'll have to do it very quickly. So they'll skim through. And if you're smart about where you position key information, then that's the sort of thing that will stick with them. Some examples here on the left, a policy brief that Nidhi was a co-author on, talking about wild seaweed stocks. That pull quote there essentially captures the key messages from that page, and on the right-hand side you have an image, a very nice image of seaweed farmers returning with their harvest to shore in Malaysia. So that also gives a bit of a real-world connection as well. With that, I will stop here, and I will hand over to Nidhi, who will talk a little bit more about the key points that she thinks are worth keeping in mind, and also to talk a little bit about her experience with policy briefs. So Nidhi, over to you. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna just
thank you, Andrew. Thomas, if you can just open my presentation, that'll be a great help. Just dealing with some technical.
Give me a second.
Loading things here. Okay, well, as a scientist for the past 15-20 years, I've been involved in translating messages that are sometimes overly complex into simple format. Well, these are the 7 points from my own experience of doing that. But I think perhaps Andrew has covered in part some of the messaging that I had on screen. But I just wanted to also emphasize from the scientific viewpoint, and especially for the participants today with us, group of, I'm sure there are many scientific people with scientific background, mixed method approach. So a mixed method approach also helps us to align with the point, with the point that Andrew was mentioning, having that qualitative visuals that showcase a story or a narrative, but also quantitative graphs that catches the attention of policymakers in a format in terms of numbers, patterns, trends. I also use
can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. Well, thanks.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, very well. Thanks. I also used AI. So AI could be definitely a very friendly tool again to capture some of the policy messages. And that's what I wanted to show in this very complex SDGs, all SDGs together, people meeting. And I say this, I'm also in a conference of parties meeting of one of the Rio conventions on desert and desertification, drying and desertification here in Riyadh. And I think that's the scene, how the scene looks like. And there's a lot of information to digest, and if we are able to not not simplify, but retaining the complexity of the scientific exploration, able to convey the message that policymakers can use for negotiation processes. That's we have really done a job as scientists. Next slide, please. Next slide. This policy briefs for us when we are presenting them or launching them in high-level political forums, including climate COP or other COPs or other UN-steered meetings, is also to building relationships. When we carry a product in hand that talks to a policy audience, they feel very connected, because we are also facilitating them in delivering the promises, the pledges, the documentation to action pathways that they are communicating, they are discussing in these events. So I think in the context of time, I'm going to just focus on these 2 points from my 7-point agenda, which you can see on the slides. Thomas has a copy of the slides, and maybe move on to the next slide. Well, I have selected 2 or 3 examples. One is also trying to, if you're publishing on a very topical issue, in this case, the energy, net zero transition, just transition, green transition, all these nice buzzwords. But if you're able to put them in a perspective, in a harmonized way through a policy brief, which has enough science, which has policy messaging. And we in this policy brief we launched in Baku 2 weeks ago in the climate COP, we focused on hydrogen, because we know that many states, member states of the UN, many private sector, public sector agencies are very keen to learn how to plug into the hydrogen discourse, hydrogen alliances, agreements, trade, and we are giving them some kind of a direction, pathway to engage, guiding principles. So this policy brief was very timely, and sometimes you have to really pick up those keywords, those entry points, points of common concern. However, in other cases, if you are doing a long-term project for several years, you need to have series of policy brief at spread over the time of the project. So in this project, which we had a 10-year span with the Scottish government and UK government on a specific sector, we had a series of policy briefs at different levels. First, taking a feedback on methodology, taking a feedback on our results, taking a feedback on our policy recommendations. So I'm also talking about the spread here. Next slide, please. When we are launching the policy brief, yes, we are launching the policy brief. We launched a couple of policy briefs in the climate COP in Dubai. It's also important that you have in your discussion on the platform the right stakeholders. So as you see on the screen, we had ministers or ministerial representation from more than 6 member states, geographically represented, to be able to comment on the policy brief messaging that we have presented. And that is also a strategic step. So you write a document, but you're able to gather feedback and you can revise. You can have a revised version of the policy brief. So here I wanted to talk about the process and how to use these high-level political stages or a regional level stages like a European Commission steered events or meetings or conferences to get feedback, and to maybe even have a reiterated or refined or revised version of the policy brief. So this is a step we often try to put into the process of taking our messaging from science to policy lobby. The next slide, please. In the next slide, we launched another policy brief yesterday at Riyadh. This policy brief is about looking into synergies, and I understand that your project deals with multiple sectors, be it transport, be it energy, be it food security, water infrastructure. So it's also important to have some policy briefs and have discussions on policy brief, or able to showcase your policy brief in these events that talks to multiple stakeholders and multiple scales. So you are not able, if you're even working on different working groups, you're still able to have policy briefs that connect the messaging across those working groups. So this is something that we did yesterday, and I think it was very well received because multiple stakeholders could align with the messages that we were saying. We had a great audience from all sectors, and we were talking about synergizing the multilateral environmental agreements. So whether it relates to energy security or food security, we put the messaging in one policy brief, working with several partners. And this is my last slide. I gave a more of a pictorial representation that, yes, we do the documentation, to see that we are able to discuss that with the right audiences, take feedbacks, are able to discuss our policy recommendations as a face-to-face discussion, but maybe also at online workshops and seminars to ensure that our messages are concrete, concise, and context specific. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nidhi. And Andrew, of course. Then I'm gonna stop sharing. Does anyone wants to ask a question to Dr. Nagabatla and Andrew Dew, please? Give me the chat. Everything clear then? It's been very enlightening for me. I mean, it's very useful and constructed methodology, and really appreciated your presentation.
Thank you. Also, feel free to send us questions because it takes a time to process all this information.
Of course.
And we did a sort of a quick run through, but feel free to approach us. We can share samples of all our policy briefs. Also, we have a strategy to write a policy brief. So we are happy to share all the documents as a collaborator to this project. Thank you, Thomas.
Excellent, excellent. Great. Okay, yes, I think you're right. It's a lot of information to digest. But I will definitely, send you the potential question that may be raised afterwards. Thank you for joining us from Riyadh, and enjoy your event, the COP. Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and good luck with the rest of the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so we just reached the end of session 1. A little bit earlier than expected. So the break was supposed to take place at 11, but perhaps everyone can take a little longer break. I suggest, if you agree, Mariana, we can meet up at 11:15.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so that everyone can digest all this information.
Yeah, an opportunity for a longer break. So yeah, I think we can all have a break and come back at 11:15.
11:15. Please, everyone, be on time because session 2 will be a bit intense as well. So I kindly ask you to be on time, please. Okay, so enjoy your break. See you later.
See you in a bit.